WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker, and this is going to be a special day of programming. The last hour of the James Show is going to be interrupted for coverage of the Peace Summit that's happening right now. If you're not near a TV, pretty much any channel that has anything to do with news has a live shot here, and it almost looks like they're using the same camera because in my studio here at WBAP in the mothership, I have one TV that's on Fox News, one TV that's on MSNBC. They both have a split screen with Trump's playing on the left and Putin's playing on the right. So the Peace Summit is to settle the dispute between Russia and Ukraine. Trump's ultimate goal is ceasefire. Putin's ultimate goal is how much can he get in return for that ceasefire. So this is the other interesting point about this is one of the two combatants in the war isn't there. No representative from Ukraine. And that seems weird and kind of is. It kind of is unusual, but this is not your normal war. This is not your normal situation. What you have here is Ukraine's opinion doesn't really matter compared to Russia and the United States. Russia can keep this going forever without anybody's help. United States can keep this going as long as we want to, too. We can escalate the hell out of this. We haven't even sent one troop over. Ukraine, what does it matter? They can't keep it going without us. They can't last as long as Russia can without us. They might not be able to last as long as Russia can with us. So it may seem a little rude or disrespectful, but it is true. Ukraine's opinion is secondary to Russia and the United States here. There's going to be a lot to talk about at the meeting here because the concerns for Putin are pretty wide open. He's the guy that's asking for goodies right now, and Trump's just trying to keep the goodies within, don't color outside the lines or go too crazy here. But, what's Trump's incentive to not give up the Donetsk and the Donbass? These are two regions in the east of Ukraine that Putin went for first. And the rationale behind it, according to reports, I've never been, but the reports are that these two regions are overwhelmingly, something north of 90% ethnically and linguistically Russian. And it's almost an injustice that whenever they drew up the maps for what the Soviet socialist republics were going to be, they probably should have drawn that boundary a little further to the west than they did. But they didn't. And so we have some echoes here because the same thing or something similar has happened a few times with Russia in recent history, like since 2000. So Russia took Crimea about 11 years ago. Do you remember that? Under Obama, Russia just said, hey, Crimea, this is mine now. And that was it. There was no big war. There was no big complaint. There wasn't anything, Obama's just capitulating to Putin or he's Putin's puppet. No, that wasn't said at the time. It was like, yeah, that's like a 98% Russian. Everyone speaks Russian there. It's culturally Russian. It's not Ukrainian in the least. So there you go. Well, why don't we make the same argument for these two regions? Is it just bad now because the news tells you so? So you also had, even before that, in the very end of George Bush's second term, Russia rolled into a couple of Georgian provinces. You remember this? South Ossetia and Abkhazia. I had never heard of them before. They haven't been in the news since, but it was the same argument. These places are overwhelmingly Russian. They're not enjoying their life being in a country that doesn't match their ethnicity. It doesn't match their heritage, doesn't match their language. And while you think, well, Russia's got to be a pretty terrible place, who would prefer to be in Russia? There are worse places to live than Russia. Ukraine, by some measures, is the second poorest European country. Who's the poorest? Well, I was trying to look this up before the show. Moldova, okay? Which is not really something that is a big player on the world stage. But when you look at the numbers, then the numbers, granted, from countries like this are always suspect, but the unemployment rate in Russia is 2.5%. In Ukraine, it's 9.8%. How much of that is because of the war? Shut up. That's not. Don't parse this. Listen. The average income for a Russian is $15,000 a year. Now, in the United States money, that's not going to get you very far. But in Ukraine, it's $5,000. The average income in Ukraine is $5,000. If you are the people in those territories, wouldn't it make sense for you to slice off this country that's poorer than your home country, which is right next door, which you're adjacent to? If you just redraw the lines, it'll be a contiguous country again. So you can make a case for both ways, but someone's going to have to give a little ground. And that's when I say someone, we know what that is, Ukraine. And so that's going to be the weird asterisk that's hanging over this summit. Is even if they work out a deal, what if Ukraine's not on board? Can they still cause problems? Is it really over, even if Trump and Putin say it's over in Alaska today? Look at, they're shaking hands right now. They're on the red carpet, on the tarmac, right in front of their planes. There's some cool looking fighter jets in the background. That's got to be awesome. And this is the perfect place to have it, because it's easy to forget that the United States really only borders two countries with a land border, but we're just a stone's throw away from Russia, from the westernmost part of Alaska up there in the Bering Sea. And we're about 90 miles away from Cuba, from Key West. So we kind of border four countries, and it turns out Russia's one of them. Russia's not some disparate, exotic stranger on the other side of the planet. They're kind of our neighbor. And right now, Trump and Putin are getting into their cars, and they're going to scoot over to the building where I imagine they have better climate control than whatever's going on in Alaska right now. And the talks are starting. Boom. It's on. The fact that we've gotten this far is a good sign. The fact that we've gotten this far means both presidents thought it would be worth their time, and it wasn't a waste of their time, to get in a jet and fly all the way here, 16 hours or whatever it took both of them. And so let's hold on for a little piece of optimism here, and just keep an eye on the TV, and I'll pop in. If things go haywire and they end this in 12 minutes, you'll know. If it ends in an hour, you'll know. If it ends before the end of the James Show, we'll go to the press conference, because they usually have one after this, whether it ends good or bad. So keep it right here as history is being made in the historic summit between Trump and Putin in Alaska. Coming up next, Fred Fleitz. He's the former National Security Council Chief of Staff, now at the America First Policy Institute. He's going to analyze what Russia really wants out of these peace agreements. That's next on The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. All eyes are on Alaska. Putin and Trump on the ground, got out of their planes, went down a red carpet, shook hands, got into some really menacing-looking sedans, headed off to a climate-controlled building, and the summit is underway. My next guest is someone who's been a little closer to this than I have. Fred Fleitz. He is the former National Security Council Chief of Staff, now with the America First Policy Institute. Now, you're not in Alaska right now, are you? So you've been to events like this. I have a lot of questions for you, Fred. What does the entourage for these guys look like? Who accompanies Trump? Who accompanies Putin? So when they show up, as the security protocols, are they just off the charts? Because I mean, I imagine they have to clear all the airspace. They probably have to clear this whole airport. What does that look like? So, what about the translators? How does that system work? Explain that. Wow, that's interesting. I had no idea. We're talking with Fred Fleitz, former NCS Chief of Staff. I just said that backwards. NSC Chief of Staff, now with America's First Policy Institute. So Trump wants peace. He wants a ceasefire. What does Putin want? What is he going to be trying to get out of this? I feel like NATO could be a big sticking point here because when you talk about, including Russia back into the world community, I don't know if that means getting rid of NATO or adding Russia to NATO, but NATO seems to be a sticking point. All right. We're talking with Fred Fleitz, former NSC Chief of Staff, now with the America First Policy Institute. Let's play the guessing game. Here's some impossible questions. How long do you think this is going to last? Well, what's the concern that Ukraine's going to blow this up no matter what we agree to? Okay. Fred Flights, I appreciate your insights. Good stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't know, and we'll keep an eye on the summit. Thank you, sir. Coming up next on the James Show, Donald Trump asked a few questions on Air Force One on the way to the meeting this morning. You'll hear the questions and his answers, which is the last thing we have of knowing what's on his mind before he walked into this summit. You'll hear it next on the James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. What's Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. You'll notice in some of the, because I'm not the only guy you listen to today, and that's okay. I'm not going to be the only guy you listen to after 5 o'clock. However, you're going to notice the pattern when other people play the audio of Trump in the last 48 hours leading up to the summit, following the pattern that he set out in his book, Art of the Deal. And it's not a unique pattern. He didn't invent this. It's something that I think the oldest book I've read it in is the old Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. You don't ever say anything bad about the person you're trying to get concessions from. You don't put them in a position of viewing you as an adversary. You are a guy who is walking along the path next to them, trying to get to an agreement that both of you can perceive as a win. Insults do not help that process. They only hurt it. There's nothing to be gained by saying mean things about Putin. Everything to be gained by saying nice things about Putin. Now, there's a little, 3 minutes and 10 seconds clip, and it's so annoying when he does the reporter question and answer session on an airplane where there's the worst background noise. The only thing worse than that is when he's in front of the helicopter and does it. It's like, damn, dude, is there a worse place on earth to gather audio than under a helicopter blade or something? Second worst, Air Force One. But this is the most important audio because this is him just a couple hours before he's sitting down at this table trying to hammer out a peace agreement. So if you want to know where his head's at, if you want to know where his mind's at, this is the last and most important clues we have. And we're just going to walk through this bit by bit. And I'll repeat some of it if you can't hear the question or some of the answer because the background noise. I'll clear that up as we go along. But
I will say this. The biggest issue right now and an issue that's really taken hold is crime.
Look at me. I'm on the wrong file. Here it is.
Of this summit today. I can't tell you that. I don't know. It's there's nothing set in stone. I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Everyone said it can't be today, but I'm just saying I want the killing to stop. I'm in this to stop.
No. See, that's another thing he does. That he says in the book, you set expectations low. So if a deal isn't reached, then no one's disappointed. There's only a 25% chance. No one's expecting a deal. There's no pressure. It's no big deal. So you ratchet back the pressure. You ratchet down the expectations. You say nice things about the guy across the table from you, even if you loathe the guy. He's following the businessman's blueprint. That's what that is. That's why he said when he was asked, what are the chances you reach an agreement? Normally Trump's like, oh, it'll be the best peace summit ever. I know it, you know it. Everybody knows it. Believe me. But I heard this was on WFAA, the reporter Janelle. This was today. I hadn't heard this anywhere else. Well, actually, I read it somewhere else, but this is the only audio I found of it.
It will actually walk away with a deal.
Well, President Trump himself says the chances are only about 25%.
Now, he doesn't even believe that, but that's what you say going in. You lower the expectations. It's like when you want someone to see a movie, you don't tell them this is the best movie anyone's ever made. You're like, it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. Because you don't want to set the bar too high. You want them to like it too. So that's the explanation for that behavior pattern and that answer that does not fit the normal Trump pattern. That's why he's doing the businessman blueprint. Not, it's the best summit. Everybody knows it. I know it. You know it. Believe me. None of that. 25% chance of success. When does he ever say that? Only in situations like negotiations.
Killing. We're not putting up any money. We're making money. They're buying our weapons, and we're sending them to NATO, and NATO's sending us big, beautiful checks. But I don't care about that. I care about, it was a big factor when Biden spent $350 billion and got nothing. But what I do care about is they lost last week 7,011.
All right. So what he's doing here is the same thing he does with the tariff. I'm telling you, if you ever read his book, you'll just notice his blueprint every time he does it. So, in a businessman's situation, if you want another businessman to join you in a venture, one of the ways you get them to do it, just like in the tariffs, you create an unsustainable pain point. You raise tariffs on them. You talk about how good it is for you to not have a deal. Hey, I'm getting all kinds of money from tariffs. Hey, in this instance, we're getting all kinds of money from Ukraine, buying all our weapons, and we're getting a ton of money from this. Let him know that he doesn't have you by the cojones. You could just keep going with the status quo. It's the person across the table that has the problem, and you can solve it for them. Not you've given them that problem. You've caused that problem. You can exacerbate that problem. You're going to make that problem worse. You can end that pain point. This is Business 1301, y'all. Anyway, we continue.
People were lost, almost all soldiers. 36 people in a town which got hit by a missile, but over 7,000 soldiers. It's crazy.
Could you describe a little bit, Mr. President, because I know you've had a lot of phone calls with President Putin. What's the difference in a face-to-face, in-person meeting?
Look, he's a smart guy.
Nice
Been doing it
stuff.
for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president.
See, now, when we're not headed to a summit, when things are bad, when we aren't talking, Putin's a madman. Putin's a ruthless dictator. Putin's a bloodthirsty tyrant. When we're in the plane on the way to the summit, hey, he's a good guy. He's done this before. He's a smart guy. He's a competent guy. Nothing bad. That's what he's saying there. Coming up next, David Hamilton's coming back on from the National Security Economic Center at UNT, and he has a little more inside info about what's going on the ground there. How much territory is Russia going to be asking for? How much is Ukraine willing to give up? What about troop strength? How long can they keep this going? David Hamilton has some of those answers. You'll hear them next on The James Show. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coverage of the Alaska Summit continues on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Well, hey there. Welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. All eyes are on Alaska as we have the summit to work on a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Trump wants a ceasefire. God knows what all Putin wants, but they're working that out right now. And we are on watch. We're on call here. If this meeting blows up in the matter of minutes, which they just walked back there, 30 minutes ago? Their planes landed, and then they both just sat on their planes for a long time. And then they came out at about the same time, down a red carpet, shook hands, got in their respective hard cars, and went to the building to go have a chit chat. Now, that was a little over a half hour ago. And the longer the meeting takes, the better. We talk about this could be a peace summit that history looks at, like it looks at the Oslo Peace Accords or the Abraham Accords or something to that effect. But it could also be a Reykjavik moment. Now, in 1986, there was a summit between Reagan and Gorbachev, and it actually went into the second day before Reagan walked out because he felt like Gorbachev's not budging on my SDI, the Star Wars program, and so we have an impasse, and if we can't work this out, and this is a deal breaker for both of us, then it's over. We tried. We gave it a couple days. We gave it the good old college try. But the successful part, the good thing that came out of the Reykjavik summit is what could happen here. Even if it falls apart, we now have the chance for both of the guys to lay their cards on the table and cut all the BS and stop talking through back party channels or third party channels or talking to each other through the media or social media. And we actually know what the other guy's willing to give up and what he's not. What is the deal breaker? Okay, so now that we know that that's not a deal breaker, or we know that it is the deal breaker, how do we adjust our side of the bargain accordingly? And of course, it works vice versa. And so the Reykjavik, while the day that it happened, or the weekend that it happened, was in the near term a failure, there was another agreement that was reached a little over a year later. And it's widely credited with being the fruits of the failed Reykjavik summit because you had a chance for both sides to lay their cards on the table. We continue with the Trump audio. He was on Air Force One on the way to the summit earlier today. And this last little glimpse of what's going on in his mind, aren't we learning a lot about where his headspace is? What have we learned so far? He thinks there's a chance of a deal. Now, a lot of times the summits will be arranged and you'll have some underlings sort of do some pre-meeting chit-chats. And sometimes if they're not going the way either side wants to go, it'll be called off. And if it's going to be called off, it's going to be called off before they get on the plane to go out there, because then they look like fools. We just get here and we turn around and we come back. Be nice if someone had told me that a few hours ago. Well, we got through all that. We got them on the planes. We got them landed. We got them in the building. And we have them talking now for over 30 minutes. Every minute's pretty good. So let's dive back into Trump's mind when he was making the commute from D.C. to Alaska just this morning.
That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
Are you going to talk about business? Would you
Business. We have the hottest country on earth. We have the hottest economy on earth. We have the hottest country. We just set a new stock market record again. We have hundreds of billions of dollars.
Listen, he really thinks there's going to be a deal. He's talking about how hot we are, but he's not. And look, the Trump nature. We've all known this guy a little more intimately than we ever thought we would in the last 10 years. And so what do you hear there? Yeah, we're doing great. We're rocking. Everyone wants to be a part of our economy. But he's not saying Russia's economy is terrible. Because I was going over some numbers in the first segment here, letting you know how much better Russia is over Ukraine in many important metrics. And one of them, when you look at their gross domestic product, Russia's GDP, a little over $2 trillion US dollars. Ukraine, 100. Well, that can't be right. That can't be right. Just 15 billion? That's not right. It can't be that bad. Oh, it's bad. Hang on, where'd it go? I thought I had that one. That doesn't look right. 15 billion. It has to be bigger than that. 5. All right. Well, I just boo-booed. But Russia has an economy that's way bigger than Ukraine's. Of course, they have a lot more people too, and that's a good explanation of why. But access to the Ukrainian market isn't going to be an earthquake of change to the economy that it's opened up to. Being opened up to Russia, a little bit better. $2.1 trillion economy. What's the United States at? 35, 36, 38, somewhere around that neighborhood. So we're like 15 times the size of the Russian economy, and the Russian economy is a multiple of the Ukrainian economy. So he's right. Opening up our markets would be great for him. But he also skipped the step to dunk on Russia. Did he say, yeah, our economy's great, it's 15 times the size of Russia's? No. He just says, no, people want to do business with us. Russia wants to do business with us, with the implication that he wants to do business with Russia. He's being their friend, not their adversary.
Flowing in from tariffs. We're the hottest country. We were a dead country, a dead like doornail.
All right, let me skip some of this political stuff and go to the last part here. It's got some juice, or got some meat on the bone.
Deal. It actually hurts him, but in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later.
It's on the table for discussions today, Mr. President. Are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Mr. President, what did you mean?
Just one thing. What about the possibility of the United States providing security guarantees to Ukraine?
Maybe. Along with Europe and other countries. Not in the form of NATO, because that's not going to, there are certain things that aren't going to happen. Look at that. But, yeah, along with Europe, there's a possibility of that.
Mr. President, the number of business people that President Putin is bringing along, is that something?
All right. So right now, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are holding bilateral meetings in Alaska. Whenever they come out with a result, they're not going to be there all day. We'll go straight to it. Is this them now? Oh, no. Now that's, man, they tricked me. I looked up at the TV and it showed them at podiums, but no, that's from a month ago. Continuing coverage of the peace summit in Alaska between Trump and Putin next on The James Show. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there. Happy Friday, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. Did your kids make it through the first week of school? Yeah, mine are already griping. Right now, we have Trump and Putin in the middle of summit talks in Alaska right now, trying to work on a deal between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States to get a ceasefire going over there. And so the longer they're in there, the more optimistic you should be, the more optimism should grow. If there's an immediate impasse, if there was the suspicion of an immediate impasse, it probably would have come up already. So that doesn't mean this is going to be successful. That doesn't mean everything's going to work out and we're all going to have live happily ever after. It does mean that even if we don't get a final deal reached today, it's a reasonable assumption that progress is being made. And that's a good thing. Everyone should applaud that. It's a strange political situation to be in, though, because some people who, you can tell who the honest brokers in the media are or in politics are, judging their reaction to stories like this. Because if you're rooting against this summit just because, you don't want Trump to get a win, well, that's pretty ugly. War should continue just so the guy that you don't like doesn't get a win? So there might not be any positive. It's more important that no one has any positive perception of your political enemies than peace, than ending a war, than the suffering of hundreds of thousands, over 1 million now. I was trying to look up some numbers here. And when they talk about the casualty report, now casualty doesn't always mean deaths. Casualty can mean deaths or injuries. But depending on how you define it, I saw on C-SPAN right before the planes landed, they were going over a bunch of numbers. Russia has a casualty count of 950,000. Ukraine, 400,000. That's a lot of casualties. Now, that's not all deaths and injuries. But 1 million Russians, 950,000. Can I just round it up and say 1 million? Now, Russia can take this, even though they have more than twice the amount of casualties. It's a smaller fraction of their population than what Ukraine is dealing with. Ukraine is a country of 38 million people. Russia is a country of 144 million people. So Russia is 3 times the size of Ukraine as far as population goes? Do they have 3 times casualties? Nope. So Russia is actually on a per capita basis coming out ahead, but also their margin for error is a lot bigger. Russia, and I hate to be so flippant about 400,000 casualties, but Russia can afford to lose 400,000 men, a lot more than Ukraine can. And Ukraine is having a harder time replacing them with Russia than Russia is. So while the numbers look terrible for Russia, that might not be as much of an incentive as you would think to get Putin to want to end this war. Putin's like, look, the casualty trade-offs don't bother me. If we keep going down this road, he'll win. Ukraine will fold before Russia does. So we may think some of this is a big sticking point, but remember, you're a nice, decent human being who is listening to WBAP on a beautiful August afternoon with actually pretty good weather considering it's August. You're not a bloodthirsty tyrant. You're not a dictator. You're not a guy who rose up through the ranks of the KGB. And in one of the most powerful yet dangerous and corrupt countries in the world, you came out on top. You are the strong men of strong men. And you've been able to hold on to that power since what? The late 90s? Yeah, we had that little brief flirtation with after Putin ran through both of his terms. Remember when he stuck in Medvedev, his little puppet? And no one bought that Medvedev was anything other than a stand-in for Putin and totally beholden to Putin. In fact, it was so bad that I was like, well, if everyone's just going to admit it, then I'll run for president again and we can cut this charade out. And he did. And he won. So when you have a system of governance like this, where only the most ruthless, the most cunning, and the most cutthroat get to the top, that's who Trump's sitting across the table with right now. And remember, he doesn't think like you and I do. He doesn't have to. He shouldn't. But that could be a big impediment to peace right there, is the fact that if you care about human death and suffering, you want to come to a peace agreement, even if it hurts, even if you don't like the terms completely, even if you find the terms pretty disgusting, you find death of your fellow man even worse. Remember, some people don't find that worse. Some people are indifferent to the human suffering of others. I don't know if he's a psychopath or a sociopath or just a shrewd businessman who manages to dissociate himself from the humanness of the situation. But don't think that Putin is running to the table begging for peace here. He's going to get something out of it. Trump's going to be criticized for it. Whatever happens, if there is a peace agreement, you know how it's going to be reported. Just go ahead and get your mind ready for that. It'll be Trump capitulated to Putin. We told you Trump was Putin's puppet, or Trump was Putin's bee, or whatever the latest Russia conspiracy theory of the day is. All right, coming up next, Brent Sadler with the conservative think tank Heritage Foundation coming in to ask the politics of the situation and what does Russia really want out of this. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. Now listen, when Monday rolls around, you're going to get a nice summary of what happened, if any progress was made, what progress was made, what changes, what's the next step. And we'll go back to the rest of the headlines and, talk about some other fun things. But today, all eyes are on Alaska. Don't get to say that very often. And this state that used to be part of the Russia, which is now part of the United States, kind of seems like the perfect middle ground for Trump, Putin, sit down, get across the table, see if these two kids can't hammer out some sort of deal and we can end this silly war and move along. My next guest from one of America's great conservative think tanks, the Heritage Foundation, Brent Sadler. Welcome to the James Show, sir. All right, so from the point of view of a foreign affairs expert, we have an uneven list of demands at the table. Trump wants peace. He wants a ceasefire. Putin wants all kinds of things. Can we narrow that down? What does Putin need to come out of this with to get a peace deal? Well, Brent, explain to me why is this so important for Putin? Why can't he just keep going on with the status quo? Because look, the cynic in me says if the status quo continues, eventually Putin's going to win. Ukraine can't keep this up as long as Russia can. Right? We're talking with Brent Sadler from the Heritage Foundation. I only see upside for Trump. If he doesn't get a peace deal here, that's just status quo. It's kind of hard to blame him for that. If he does get a peace deal, he looks like a great guy. So does he really have much on the line, politically speaking, as a result of this summit? Well, hang on. That's my next question. Yeah. No, I was going to say that's my next question. Putin, we think that he's a dictator and no one can knock him out of a seat of power, but there's oligarchs under him. I'm sorry, am I interrupting lunch? Are you at a Shoney's or something? Okay. It sounds like you're at like the Sizzler or something. But how much politically can Putin sustain this war? Is he ever at risk of losing his job? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the economics here. The economics in Ukraine have been devastating. It's been a big pain in the butt for Russia. Is there really any economic hit for us from dealing with this war? The other thing that I think is going to be the most important variable to watch after the summit is what's Ukraine's reaction to this. I feel like it doesn't matter what happens here, Ukraine reserves the right to blow this whole agreement up. How long do you think this is going to take? All right. Good talk. Interesting stuff. This is Brent Sadler, foreign affairs expert with the Heritage Foundation, America's greatest conservative think tank. Appreciate it, sir. Okay, so we have the TVs. Well, they keep going to commercial. So I have another window open here to the C-SPAN feed, and they have a live shot in Anchorage at the two podiums where we're expecting the two gentlemen, Trump and Putin, to come out and have a chat at some point. Now, we're sort of soft expecting this at 4, but they don't have to follow a schedule. This is an 8th grade homeroom. They could leave early. They could leave late. They could stay for 48 hours straight. But the background has Pursuing Peace is on the backdrop behind the podium. And that's pretty good. Who came up with that? What did we have ad wizards who are working on this? So you listen to these commercials, buy everything they tell you to buy. I'm going to keep an eye on these podiums. When they come out, we're going to jump to it. So if you hear an awkward jump in the programming, it's because we're going to try and bring you history as it happens here on WBAP. But continuing coverage of the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska next on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Happy Friday. How's it going? My next guest answers a lot of these foreign policy questions on what's going on the other side of the ocean. Has been invaluable on the James Show and following this story through all its weird twists and turns. Dr. Jeff Brodeur from Rigaku back on the James Show. He has expertise in chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear consulting, and rate your level of optimism on the likelihood of success of this summit, Jeff. You know, I was mentioning earlier, a previous guest agree with me. And then since then, I even got an email here from Rick and Past Christiane where everyone seems to be in agreement that Ukraine's going to have to give up some territory. And they're talking about the two oblasts, Donbass and Donetsk. Do you think Ukraine's going to be okay with that? So, what do you think Ukraine's role in all this is really? Because, I mean, they talk a big game, but if we come to an agreement and they don't want to work with that, then what? We're just going to turn them over to Russia? I hear you on that one. All right, we're talking with Dr. Jeff Roder from Rigaku. So what have we learned militarily about Russia's capabilities? I mean, they had to show their hand in some of their technology and their capabilities. What did you learn from that, Jeff? Wow, man, that's overwhelmingly positive and optimistic. You're not getting commission or anything off of that, are you? I'm just having fun with you. Just all right, Dr. Jeff. I appreciate your insights once again on the James Show. You can find him at Rigaku, and I'm sure we'll hear from you after the summit too. Thank you very much. You know, sometimes on this show, I wish I had gone to law school. Sometimes on this show, I wish I had been in the military. Today's one of the military days. There's just some things that these people know that I don't, and I'm quite jealous. All right, still coming up on the James Show. We have now the other TV stations besides C-SPAN are doing the live camera on the two podiums at the Alaska Summit. It says pursuing peace in the background. When they walk out, we'll go straight to it because we don't want you to miss history in the making here. From Alaska, Trump and Putin on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, sports fans, more specifically football fans. Yeah, football's back. And if you have a favorite player in the world of football, oh, he's on Prize Picks. Oh, he's going to be on there. Are you a college football guy? Well, they've got college football on Prize Picks. They've already got Arch Manning. They've already got his statistic for the first game against Ohio State. Oh, they're coming out the gate with what may be the hardest schedule of the year, and we're going to find out real quick if this guy is going to end up being a legend or just a big name, and you can take advantage of your inside info on that with Prize Picks. So there's one guy in your lineup. All you need is 2 to 6 guys to submit a lineup and turn your money into real cash. So why don't you jump over to the pros, and we'll take a look at some of the guys that are playing in the preseason game this weekend. You can take the kicker. You can take one of the 18 running backs I've never heard of, but go find your statistic, choose more or less, and then watch the money roll in. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Your best way to get sports action in more than 40 states, including Texas. I know they're trying to legalize all kinds of other things, but Prize Picks, there's no gray area here. 100% legal in Texas. So take advantage and have a little bit more fun with the football that you're already enjoying. Just put a little bit more spice on top of it, and you can do it with our money. Download the Prize Picks app. Use promo code WBAP. You get $50 with your first $5 lineup. I'll repeat that. For you slow people out there, you Cleveland Brown fans, if you download the WBAP app, the Prize Picks app, use promo code WBAP, you get $50 in promo cash with your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I'm just kidding. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. You thought that was Axl Rose for a second there, didn't you? All right, top story of the day, the obvious one, the summit that's happening in Alaska. And, you know, you can't really overhype this because the potential on what this could be is historic. But also, this might be in a month, 6 months, a year from now. We don't even remember this because there was no fruits of this labor. So we all know that the spectrum is probably going to land somewhere in the middle. But just in case this is something that'll be in the history books that your great grandkids have to learn about long after we're all gone, we have some special guests that are coming up in the next hour. Number one, Monty's going to be joining me from the morning show. Yeah, Monty Cook, the news guy from the morning show. You've been hearing him on WBAP for a long time, probably about as long as I've been listening. But then also in the 4 o'clock hour, Brad Barton, yeah, the chief meteorologist at WBAP. And he doesn't like to, steer outside of his lane very much. He usually sticks with weather. But he has a impressive depth of knowledge on this story, and we're going to share some of his Russia-Ukraine expertise with you around 4:35-ish. So, special edition of the James Show. This is not the regular Friday, whatever. This is maybe history in the making. And I was kind of having some fun with this because I was thinking, once Putin sees that Trump wants to make a deal and he wants a ceasefire and he's willing to give up territory, he's willing to give up the sanctions, Trump's willing to give up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and make all these concessions. Like, how far you think Putin could go? Because I was thinking, if you're Russian, if you're Putin, wouldn't you like for them to change the ending of Rocky IV? Could that be a demand? Can we go back? We'll just remaster it. We'll put out a special edition where Ivan Drago wins at the end. See, that's the kind of out of the box thinking that Putin, you need to have me on your team, bud. We can make all kinds of amazing things happen. But what about the ending of Red Dawn? You have Patrick Swayze and all his dumb little high school Wolverine friends get killed by some Russians in an AK-47 or a well-placed tank. Oh, man. So the fun part about talking about this story is, jokes aside, nobody knows how this is going to end. Everyone can have speculation all they want, but no one really knows. And for some reason, I think that's fun. That's exciting. That's not... you don't want to watch a Super Bowl like the one that happened last year every year. You want some of them to be close games. So I was trying to decipher, well, what's in the mind of the Russians right now? Well, Sergei Lavrov, he's one of I think he's like their equivalent of Marco Rubio over there. He landed before Putin did. He got to Alaska a little early. And this was his thoughts as he was walking in.
Мы никогда не загадываем ничего наперед. Мы знаем, что у нас есть аргумент, у нас есть позиция понятная, четкая. Мы будем ее излагать. Здесь уже немало сделано в ходе визитов Стивена Уиткофа. Президент об этом сказал. И Уиткоф выступал от имени президента.
Garrett, can you translate that for me? My Russian's a little rusty here. What did he say? Yeah, I don't know either. It's funny when you hear Russian, and I think this applies to a couple other languages, like a German and maybe even a Polish. It sounds like they're speaking English, but backwards, doesn't it?
Мы никогда не загадываем.
All right, so now I can do this thing because I have an audio editor here because I'm a professional. I'm going to reverse it and see if you can tell, is it any different if I take the Russian he spoke, turn it backwards, and now let's listen to it. That's marginally different. That's barely different, but that's Sergei Lavrov. He was actually saying Trump is in no position to make big demands. Russia's not in the history of giving up to demands. And he was wearing a CCCP shirt, which translates into English as USSR. He's wearing a Soviet Union shirt. And I guess he was just trying to, getting Trump's head or something. But that's the scuttlebutt around the drama surrounding the summit. Coming up next, you're going to hear from Monty Cook from the WBAP Morning Show and get our newsman's take on the historic occasion, Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska right now. That's coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Happy Friday, beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. We are interrupting the James Show to bring you some special programming in honor of the historic occasion. We are dedicating the last hour to the WBAP roundtable discussion of the Trump-Putin summit happening right now in Alaska. And first up, Monty Cook, the WBAP morning news anchor. Welcome, sir. I can't believe they made you... Oh, he's not here yet? Where'd he go? Oh, okay. Well, Monty Cook will be our first up. There he is. Sorry, we caught him in the hallway. So he's not going to be our only special guest. We also have Brad Barton coming up later in the hour. And this is going to be cool because I get to see Brad Barton not be a news guy every once in a while. When I talk to him in the hallway, at a meeting, at a station event, in the elevator, you get to hear the man actually talk about something besides weather. And I don't know why that's so cool, right? It's like when a pop star talks about politics, and I don't know why we care. It doesn't mean he's necessarily more qualified, but no, he's well read on the issue, and he's going to be a good guest, and you're going to be quite impressed when he comes up. Plus, everybody likes him. So Brad Barton also coming up. And we have a couple other guests slated here. So we're going to be keeping an eye on the podiums. I got a little excited there on the break because Fox News and MSNBC are on here, but I keep one monitor on C-SPAN as well. And they had the two podiums out there, and they have a live picture on it. Whatever else they're doing is on the other half of the screen. In the corner over here, they're keeping a live shot of the two podiums in Anchorage, Alaska, where the Trump and Putin are expected to come out and give some talks or give some thoughts after the talks are finished. And two guys walked out there, and I was like, oh, no, it's happening. But it wasn't Trump and Putin. I was like, okay, well, are they giving us the 2-minute warning? Because that's not just a football thing. They do that in the media, too. They tell everyone, hey, we're about to start here. They'll either tell you 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. So, you don't go to commercial break right before everyone's walking out. So I thought maybe it was going to be that. And then here we are, we're looking at it. By the time we actually get back and sit down, the podiums are empty and it looks like there's no progress. With that, Monty Cook joins us from the WBAP Morning Show. Man. Aren't you like the voice of the TCU stadium? There you go. Yeah, except for every single home game. So your thoughts. First off, the fact that they even made it to the meeting told me that both guys are serious about it. Number two, the fact that they've been talking now for 2 hours, exactly 2 hours. This is when they walked into their cars and went into the building. I think that's progress too. No one's left yet. So generally speaking, do you share my... Yeah. Two hours. Okay, but a previous guest, Dr. Jeff Brodeur from Rigaku, made the good point that this could be some theatrics that Putin is going through just to buy some time and sort of run out the clock until winter rolls around. Well, I mean, we like to paint Putin as this warmongering tyrant, but he really doesn't want to continue the war. He wants all the goodies in Ukraine that we would be willing to give him. He's just willing to continue fighting until we change our mind. Well, if he's fighting against us, if it's just him in Ukraine, it's over. Because when's the last time someone beat the Russians in Russia in a land war, like Genghis Khan? Yeah, so I don't think Ukraine's going to do it, especially not without our help. There's no chance there. Hey, Monty, what time did you wake up this morning? Oh my God. Just to let y'all know what a treat it is to have him working this late. 4:11 in the afternoon is like 2 a.m. to you, I guess. Yeah. Right. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Monty Cook for the next segment. We're continuing with the WBAP roundtable discussion of the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, and he's going to interview Jacob Oladort from the America First Policy Institute. Coming up next, special coverage continues on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, you're listening to the WBAP roundtable discussion of the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska today. In the roundtable is myself, Monty Cook from the WBAP Morning Show. And coming up in the next segment, Brad Barton, chief meteorologist for WBAP, but also has some amazing insights on the situation. Now, my next guest is going to be in a unique situation because this is a guy that actually grew up under the Soviet Union. His name is Slava Fish. Welcome to WBAP, and thank you for joining us on this, what could be a historic Friday. Okay, so give me a little bit of your background. You grew up under the Soviet Union. What year was it? When did you come here? Go. Man, you barely have an accent, so good job there. So from your point of view, what do you think should happen here? All right, well, we'll get a little progressively tougher. Should Ukraine be willing to give up some land? Well, more specifically, the Donbass and the Donetsk. I don't know the regions very well, but the reports say that those are overwhelmingly Russian, both ethnically, linguistically, culturally, whatever, and they would rather be a part of Russia anyway. What's your response to that? All right, we're talking with Slava Fisha, Ukrainian expert who grew up under the Soviet Union. Interesting take here. So, if you don't feel like the Russia majority region should be given up, are you still upset that they gave away the Crimean Peninsula? Mm-hmm. Right. It wasn't even your fault. You have no control over the Crimean Peninsula. All right, Slava Fish. It was really cool talking to someone with that kind of background. Belarus, Ukraine, Soviet Union. I really appreciate your insights, sir. Thank you. Coming up next, Brad Barton from the WBAP Morning Show continues the coverage on the WBAP roundtable discussion of the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. He's next on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, you're listening to the WBAP roundtable discussion of the Trump-Putin summit. Special programming in place of the James Show in honor of the historic summit that's happening right now between Trump and Putin. And, you know, in preparation for this, we expected, I'm sorry, Brad Barton's not going to be here. He got stuck in traffic, but there's only one segment anyway. In preparation for this, we were expecting about 2 hours or so into this, maybe around 5 o'clock, which is, you know, now, that they would be wrapping it up and coming out to this podium. But there's no set schedule. I am looking at the empty podiums right now, and they keep head faking me where people will come into the room. The room's almost empty now. There's only 2 people in the frame at all. I see all the empty chairs. During the break there was this time when like 15 people came into the room, and I thought it was starting. I got all excited. And then I don't know what they did. They just looked at their phones and left. So something's weird going on here, but I'll continue to be optimistic in the fact that they're still talking means things haven't fallen apart just yet. And the fact that they're still talking and taking this long means there's either progress being made or Putin is just stringing him along to buy some time. Those are the only 2 scenarios that make sense. And so if you're really all wrapped up in the politics of this, which, you know, whether it's MSNBC or Fox News, they have a tendency to focus on how does this affect Trump. MSNBC wants this to hurt Trump. Fox wants it to help Trump. That's kind of exhausting here. But if you want to go ahead and play in that field, I don't think there could be a negative for Trump in here, especially at this point. We're already past the negatives. There could be something negative to be said if in some of the pre-summit meetings that were happening in the last 48 hours, talks fell apart. It could be said as a failure for Trump if they didn't get on their planes and actually come to Alaska today because they knew that something wasn't going to work out, and so they didn't want to waste their time. If the summit would have failed or broken apart in 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, you would have a place to criticize Trump. But here we are now, almost 3 hours into it. Things are still going. We are past the territory to where it's hard to imagine how this could end up negative for Trump. Now, I'm not saying it's going to end up positive. You know, the most likely scenario is indifference. We don't even remember this a year from now. But there is an upside, and I think that there's no downside. 800-288-9227. As we continue to